Good day, people. This is your boy John Man, aka the Nappy Headed Assassin, aka I am Manny's son, aka the world's worst football prognosticator, aka the Catman. And this is week two of the Catman Cometh. It's coming to you live from the Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby Studios from Parts Unknown. I'm going to do a quick rundown on my weekly picks for week two. Last week was a little bit over mediocre. I was 9-6-1. 9-6-1 last week. The push was the Indianapolis and Houston game. To start off this week, I am 1-0 at Thursday night's game. Correct. I had the Chiefs beating the Los Angeles Chargers. So far, I am 1-0 for the week. And without further ado, we will get started a little bit like this. Start off with the 1 o'clock games. Miami versus Baltimore. This was a tough pick for me. Uh, Last week, Miami played a phenomenal game. Something before I get to, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. Before I get to my picks, I just want to give out my weekly game balls. My offensive player of the week last week was Mr. Patrick Mahomes, uh, quarterback for Kansas City. And my defensive player of the week was Jerry Hughes, defensive end for the Houston Texans. But back to the Miami and Baltimore game. Miami last week played a pretty good game. They played against the New England Patriots. They completely uh, dominated that game. Offense looked very well. Defense looked phenomenal. I don't know what they're doing in New England. Were they coming off a 28-7 when Tua looked pretty decent, um, but New England looked horrible. Also, last week Baltimore looked very well. They excuse me. Baltimore looked very well last week. They played and defeated the New York Jets. The game wasn't even close. Lamar looked pretty decent. The defense was just shut down that offense completely. Flacco put up some numbers, but those, it was inconsequential. They was forced to throw the whole game, couldn't run the ball whatsoever. Um, this is one of the toughest games that I had to pick today. All the signs were leaning for me to pick Miami, um, but given the fact that the Ravens defense is pretty decent and it's a home game, I am picking Baltimore to beat Miami. Next game is the Jets versus Cleveland, probably the ugliest um, game scheduled um, at the 1 o'clock setting. And we got the 1-0 Browns versus the 0-1 Jets. Cleveland coming up off that, I guess you could say, an emotional win versus Carolina, facing Baker Mayfield and those boys. Um, their passing offense looked hideous. Jacoby Brissett, it's not one of the greatest passers. I know they're waiting and biding their time until they can get Deshaun Watson. Um, and Their running game was pretty decent. Um, their running game was pretty decent. They had 217 yards rushing last week, going up against a um, top flight rushing defense. The Jets stopped the run pretty well last week. Um, So that's where it's going to be in the trenches. If Cleveland can win the ball, excuse me, if Cleveland can run the ball effectively, they should be able to blow out the Jets. And I am predicting that Cleveland should be able to run the ball. I trust their running game more than I trust the Jets and their offense. So I got Cleveland beating the Jets. Next game is Washington versus Detroit. Um, Washington is Washington is coming off a victory last week against Jacksonville. Detroit is coming off a tough loss against Philadelphia. Carson Wentz last week had 4 touchdown passes, also had 2 bad interceptions, doing what Carson does. Um, they didn't run the ball. They they didn't run the ball a lot. But it was sort of effective. Detroit couldn't stop the run, so to speak. Philadelphia ran up, down, and around them, but they were able to make a couple plays in the passing game to get them back into the game. The Lions are 1.5 favorites against Washington, meaning that Vegas has no faith in Detroit whatsoever. And I agree with that sentiment because I don't have any faith in the Lions. I am picking Washington um, to win on the road and start off 2-0 against Detroit. Next game is Indianapolis and Jacksonville. The Colts, as you well know, has struggled in Jacksonville um, of late, and that's one of the reasons why they got rid of Carson Wentz because he and the whole team collapsed in a must-win situation last week to get in the playoffs, and they failed mightily. Jacksonville played pretty tough last week against Washington, but always have seems to like they have Indianapolis number at home. Um, Trevor Lawrence, I don't know what to make of Trevor Lawrence yet. He's a very young quarterback. I think there was a lot put on him to start off his career. He was supposed to be the next greatest thing since sliced bread, and obviously he looks like a piece of burnt toast. And but he did look solid last week at times. But then he looked like a young quarterback at the end of the game and was able to his mistakes able to allow Washington to eke out a victory. And the Colts played to a tie with the Houston Texans. Houston let Indianapolis back into that game, so Houston um, should have won that game. Matt Ryan and the boys came back at the end, tied it up, and I don't know if that's a good look, but ironically ironically, um, the excuse me, the Colts are looking like how they did last year with Carson Wentz. Um, the Colts are favorite. I don't think the Colts are favored in this game. I don't know if Vegas knows something that I don't know, but I am going to stay with the recent trend, and I am picking the Jacksonville Jaguars to beat um, Indianapolis once again at home. The next game we're going to talk about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara is not playing today. He is out. Um, Bad for the Saints, bad for your fantasy team unless you have pretty good backups. Saints has had the Buccaneers number recently, especially with Tom Brady. Tom Brady, I think, is 1-4, and the only win that Tom Brady has against the Saints is a playoff game. So I guess if you're going to beat a team, I guess you need to beat them when it really matters. But that's well. The Saints are coming off. Excuse me. The Saints are coming off a pretty decent guest week, um, where they they had Atlanta on the ropes. Well, Atlanta had them on the ropes, and then it came back, and Jameis did what Jameis does. Looks, um, you don't know what you're getting with Jameis, but he and those boys had that strong fourth quarter, and came back and eked out that victory against the Falcons. Made Mariota look like a superstar for 3.5 quarters, but the running game of the Saints, um, what I'm saying, the Saints running game was was non-existent, and the fact that and that's not even going to help the fact with Kamara being out. But Winston had a pretty strong game, 269 yards, touchdowns. Defense played average until second half. Second half they played a little bit better. With the Bucks coming off a beat down of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas lost Dak Prescott. But their defense looked awesome. Tom Brady was pedestrian. According to Tom Brady's numbers, only had 212 yards, had one touchdown, but they really didn't need much. He threw a bad pick, so that wasn't goat like. But everybody is human. Um, like I stated earlier, the Saints have had the Buccaneers number of late, and I normally would go through that trend, but I think that Tampa Bay on the road, they are a 2.5 point favorite, and I'm gonna ride with Vegas on this. I think Tampa Bay is gonna come in and not only beat the Saints. I think it's gonna be a double digit win for the Buccaneers. The next game is Carolina versus the New York Giants, and this is a very intriguing matchup. Uh, Very, very, very intriguing matchup. Carolina um, last week coming off that, I guess, like I stated earlier, an emotional loss to Cleveland. The Giants coming off that emotional win versus Tennessee. Saquon Barkley had a monster game for the Giants. Um, it was just completely unstoppable, looking like his rookie year. So if Saquon is back, so to speak, that might change a little of the dynamics of the NFC East, considering that Dak is going to be out for a few weeks. So that has a lot of bearing on it. The Giants last week, excuse me, the Giants last week, the defense. Um, the defense played solid. Um, the defense played solid, but they played solid enough to keep the game close to allow um, the Giants to get back in the game. Daniel Jones had 188 yards, short passes. He didn't miss. 17 for 21. Had two touchdowns. Solid game. Like I said, Barkley had a monster game running. Um, Sterling Shepard had a pretty decent game. One big catch for a TD. Baker, in his return, well, I guess it won't be his return, but playing against his former teammates, he was up and down, but you can see why that a lot of that Cleveland moved on with Baker. He was a little scattershot throughout the game, but he did throw for 235 and a touch. But um, McCaffrey didn't get many touches. Couldn't move the ball on the ground. He was very, very pedestrian. And if those things happen in this week's game, if things stay the same, and McCaffrey can't get that get off to take some of that pressure off of Baker, it's going to be an ugly ball game. And I believe it's going to be an ugly ball game. I have the Giants beating the Carolina Panthers. Uh, Last 1 o'clock game, New England and Pittsburgh, the Patriots and the Steelers. This is a very confusing matchup for me. When I looked at the film and broke down both teams, um, I saw a lot of good things for Pittsburgh, and I saw a lot of bad things for New England. New England, I don't know what their plan or what their emphasis is on offense. It does, there. I mean, the lack of offensive identity um, is there. In New England, they have Mac Jones, a young quarterback. They're not doing him any favors, so to speak. They're not doing him any favors by protecting him with the running the ball, or what I'm saying, and making easy throws for him. Last week, the Patriots played the Dolphins, and that the Dolphins didn't have to do much defensively. That's how bad the offense looked for the New England Patriots. Mac Jones did have 200 yards and a touch. Um, Damian Harris was their leading rusher with 48 yards on 9 rushes. And Jacob Myers was Mac's go-to receiver, had 4 receptions at 55 yards. Um, but they just didn't look they didn't look crisp. On the flip side of that, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers played in one of the most exciting games of last week of opening week against Cincinnati. They came out there and put the hands on Cincinnati, knocked around Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow threw a bunch of picks, and then they probably hit him one time too hard because he got his senses back and brought Cincinnati back. Um, and One of the craziest overtimes that you'll ever see. Um, Pittsburgh blew it and still had the chance to redeem themselves and pull it off in overtime. Mitch Trubisky looked like Mitch Trubisky. Um, Had a solid game. Only had 194 yards. But he didn't. What I'm saying, they kept the game simple for him. They kept the game plan. You know, was simple enough that he didn't make, or they didn't put him in positions for him to make a lot of mistakes. Um, the running game, it was. I don't want to say non-existent, but it was enough to keep Cincinnati off base. Um, now with um, Now with the defense of Pittsburgh, their defense looked phenomenal, and I had Pittsburgh only winning 7 games this year, and if Tomlin, and them boys have that defense the way that it needs to be, and they get Mitchell Trubisky playing, um, have Mitchell Trubisky playing mistake-free football, they will definitely be in the mix. I won't say for the division, but possibly for a wild card. Still think that Baltimore will win that division. But without that said, I have Pittsburgh beating New England, and I think actually Pittsburgh is going to beat the brakes off of New England. I think it's going to be a double-digit win, even though New England is 2-point favorites. 4 o'clock games. Um, Seattle versus San Francisco. Seattle coming off that emotional win with Russell Wilson's quote unquote homecoming. Geno Smith looks solid. San Francisco coming off that horrible loss against Chicago. Trey Lance looked like a young quarterback. I mean, he looked lost. He looked very frustrated. He looked flushed. But the weather out there was horrible. So I don't know if the weather had anything to do with it, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I think San Francisco has too many weapons. San Francisco are 8.5 point favorites. I don't think it's going to be that large. I have them winning a very close game, so I have San Francisco winning closely um, by three. I think it's going to be a one. You know, it's going to be a one possession game. I think Seattle has. I think Gino plays well enough to keep them close, but I think San Francisco just have too many weapons. Atlanta at the Rams. Atlanta lost that heartbreaker to New Orleans last week. The Rams um, got beat down on their opening week versus the Buffalo Bills. Matt Stafford looked. They just rocked Matt Stafford. The offense looked horrible. Stafford looked horrible. Um, but they're playing against a great Buffalo defense. I don't think that's gonna. I don't think that's going to be the case this week. Um, Atlanta is the type of opponent that they need to get back on track. So I have the Rams beating the Falcons. Cincinnati and the Cowboys. The Cowboys lost Dak Prescott. Unfortunately, at the end of the game against the Buccaneers, Cincinnati lost that heartbreaker in overtime, which they played horrendous against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cincinnati is a big time favorite, and I'm going to roll with Vegas on this one. I think it's going to be a double digit win for Cincinnati. I don't think Cooper Rush is ready yet to start pulling off upsets. He might in the near future, but I don't think this will be the week. Houston versus Denver. Houston with that tie against the Colts, a game that they gave away. But Davis Mills looks solid. Denver um, with that emotional loss to Seattle, where the coach made a bonehead. Coach Hackett was made a decision like Buddy Hackett for all your old school nuts and um, movie aficionados, and had a kicker try to kick it from all the way from Vancouver, um, and it didn't work. But I do like Denver in this. I think Russ gets them boys back on track and beats Houston. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think Houston will look pretty good in the first 1.5 quarters, and I think it's going to be Russ all day, every day, in there, everywhere. I think they want to send a message to everybody else in the AFC West that they are for real. Arizona and the Raiders. Arizona. Um, Arizona is coming off that beat down. Um, or excuse me, Arizona's coming off that beat down against Kansas City, where Patrick Mahomes threw 5 touchdowns. I mean, he could have thrown 12. That's how pathetic Arizona looked. I'm not big on Arizona at all this year. I think their quarterback is a tad bit overrated. Money has nothing to do with my um, has nothing to do with that, but I just think he's a tad bit overrated. Um, I think they need to get that running game in order. Hopefully, Connor can get that in play. Raiders, um, excuse me, Raiders coming off that loss to the Chargers, a game that they should have won, I believe. Derek Carr looks pretty solid. I think that the Raiders at home are going to be taking out Arizona. So to run down today's games, I have Baltimore, Cleveland, Washington, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Giants, Pittsburgh, San Fran, the Raiders. I have Cincinnati, Denver, and I'm sorry, did I say the Raiders? I'm sorry. The Rams over Atlanta, and I have the Raiders over Arizona, Denver, and Houston. Tomorrow I will give my Monday night picks. To Tennessee and Buffalo, Minnesota and Philadelphia. So look out for that. I'll be going live with those picks and going a little bit deeper in details with that. 1 o'clock kickoff is coming in effect. I am the Catman. You can excuse me, you can follow me on all social media. Uh, at John Man Baby. That's JONMANNBABY. That's everything except TikTok. On TikTok is John Man Baby the Assassin, spelled out. Also on Catmandu Sports. Um, everything social media, all Catmandu Sports, either or Catmandu Sports or John Man Baby. You have a wonderful day. You know what I'm saying? Kickoff is here. Enjoy your Sunday, and I look forward to speaking with y'all, good people, tomorrow.